I used to think Halloween was just a kid's game: candy, Jacko, lanterns, capes, and laughter in the autumn wind. But from that night on, every time I heard the wind rustling through the maple trees, I remembered the hemp rope tied to the wooden railing in front of our house, where the first letter had appeared. That year the town reopened the parade. My parents were on night duty at the hospital, leaving me to watch the house, hand out candy, and say, "Turn off the porch light when the candy runs out." I nodded, feeling old enough to not be afraid of a few knocks on the door. I lit 2 candles in the pumpkin my mother had carved, and hung yellow LED lights on the porch roof. Children came in like a small stream, masks and capes fluttering in the cold wind. By 9 o'clock, I had only half a bowl of candy left, and the road ahead was deserted. I was about to close the door when there were 3 knocks, very light and rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. I opened it slightly. On the railing was tied a hemp envelope, soaked with water. No one was outside, just the dim light and the smell of damp leaves. I took it out and opened it. Inside was an old piece of paper, the ink blurred. "If anyone knocks 3 times at the back door tonight, don't open it. Put a lamp on the sill, they'll pass by. Initials, E." I laughed. Someone was joking, probably some young men in town. I folded it, put it in my pocket, and went inside to turn on the radio to ease the silence. Outside, the wind carried the scent of cinnamon and roasted pumpkin, the familiar scent of October. About 9:30, I went to check the back door and heard a click, click, click. I stood still. The sound echoed exactly as the letter said. I shined a light through the crack in the glass. No one, just a wet yard and a tilted wooden chair. I felt cold, but I listened to the letter. I took a flashlight, put it on the sill. The light shone out the crack. The knocking stopped. I went back to the living room, poured hot milk, and told myself it was just a joke. The radio was playing a program about memorable Halloweens, and the female voiceover laughed. "Sometimes, the one knocking on the door is your own memory." 10 minutes of silence. Then click, 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 this time at the front door. I opened it slightly. No one, but there was another hemp rope tied to a small, dull brass bell. Under the bell was a piece of paper. Put the bell next to the light. Still signed E. I took the bell and placed it next to the flashlight that was on. As soon as I put it down, the bell rang a very small, thin sound like a breath. I stepped back, half panicked, half sympathetic to whoever was playing a strange game out there. At 10 o'clock, the radio switched to static, interspersed with a fleeting voice. A child tied a bell so he wouldn't get lost in the night. I turned the dial, and the sound disappeared. The wind picked up. And then, from the living room window, click, 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 there were 3 round watermarks on the glass, like the tip of a finger just touched. I pulled the curtain and looked out onto the porch. A pumpkin-shaped paper lantern glowed dimly in the mist. No one was holding it. I shivered and closed the curtain. When I returned to the kitchen, I saw another hemp rope placed right at the door, tied to a small matchbox. Only 2 left. I tried to light it. One went out because of the wind. The second burned yellow and shone on my finger. I understood. Placing a lamp on the doorstep does not necessarily mean a flashlight. I took a small candle, lit it from a match, and placed it next to the bell. The candlelight trembled. The bell rang softly as if sighing. Outside, a rustling sound continued, sometimes like the sound of a child's footsteps trampling leaves, sometimes like the sound of raincloth. I sat against the door listening. The bell jingled a few times and then stopped. After that, everything was quiet as if nothing had happened. Mom called at that moment. Her voice was tired, There's an old man in the hospital who wants to go to Birch Road to tie a bell. He's confused. He keeps calling Eleanor. I was stunned. Mom added, we rented the house from him. Mr. Elmer, the carpenter. Every Halloween, he tied a bell to the porch for his wife, saying that if she came back, she would hear it. After the call, I stood still for a long time. The back door was ajar. The candle was almost burned out. Under the melted wax, a faint line of words was printed on the wood, as if written in pencil. If you see a bell, please light it, E. I couldn't sleep. That night, the porch light went off and on several times. Each time the light changed, the bell rang softly. On the stairs, I caught a glimpse of a person standing still, with a small hemp rope around his wrist. I just whispered, Eleanor? The bell rang once more and then disappeared. The next morning, the steps were dry. The rope was clean on the handrail. Mom said that the old man had passed away peacefully at dawn. I didn't answer, just held the bell tightly in my hand. A few days later, I took the bell to the antique clock repair shop. The old craftsman looked at it for a moment and said, this kind of bell was sold at the fair 50 years ago. People tied it to children's wrists on Halloween night so they wouldn't get lost. You could tell where it was by the sound. Then he whispered, it only rings when someone touches it, not because of the wind. From that day on, I hung the bell in the house, right next to the back door. There was no more knocking, but whenever the weather was very calm, the first snowy nights of the season, the bell rang softly, a sound as thin as a memory. Some say Halloween is the night when lost souls find their way home. I think maybe the same is true for the living, those who still wait for a knock, a bell, to know that someone is still passing through their lives. This year, the steps of house number 31 are clean of leaves. I touched the newly tied hemp rope, feeling strangely calm. If someone knocks 3 times tonight, I will not be afraid. I will light a lamp, set a bell, and say very softly through the crack in the door, thank you for passing by, I am still here. The following year, I tied the new hemp string to the handrail. On the sill, I placed a candle, a note written on it. Lighted, just pass by, I'll watch. I didn't know who would read it. But that night, amid the rustling of leaves and the flickering of the fire, I heard 3 polite, rhythmic knocks. I didn't turn it on. I just lit the lamp and watched the bell ring again. Some say Halloween is the night when lost souls find their way home. I think maybe the same is true for the living, those who still wait for a knock, a bell, to know that someone is still passing through their lives. This year, the steps of house number 31 are clean of leaves. I touched the newly tied hemp rope, feeling strangely calm. If someone knocks 3 times tonight, I will not be afraid. I will light a lamp, set a bell, and say very softly through the crack in the door, thank you for passing by, I am still here. I moved to Ashford in early October, just in time for fall foliage. It's a small Vermont town a few hours outside Boston, where every house has a wooden porch and a pumpkin patch in front of it. I was there for a job at the local library 6 months on a temporary basis, but it felt like I was moving into a place that already belonged to me. The house I rented was at the end of Ashford Street, an off-white house with peeling paint, an old wooden fence, and a porch swing, the realtor said. It's been empty for years. The previous owner moved out after a not-so-fun Halloween. I asked her why, and she just smiled and said, just think of it as people not being comfortable with Vermont. I arrived on the afternoon of October 25. It was drizzling. Maple leaves swirled in front of the windshield like burnt-colored butterflies. Across the street, some kids were hanging jack-o'-lanterns. I remember thinking, maybe Halloween in a small town like this would be nice. Little did I know that the thought would make that Halloween night never leave me again. In the early days, the house was strangely quiet. Inside were the old furniture, a desk with a lock, a few children's books on a shelf, a framed photo face down. I didn't turn it over, perhaps because I was shy. The first night, the sound of the wind coming through the door sounded like someone was talking quietly in the kitchen. I made a temporary work corner, placing the table near the window overlooking the street. Every morning, sunlight streamed through the fence, so golden it made one think winter was far away. Every evening, fog rolled down from the hill behind the house, covering the backyard where the old maple tree stood. On October 30, I went to the market to buy candy and some small pumpkins to carve faces for the holiday. The silver-haired woman who owned the stall asked me where I was from. When I said, "End of Ashford Street," she looked up. "The White House? Don't hang jack-o'-lanterns in the upstairs windows." I laughed. "Why?" The previous owner said, "The light there attracts people who shouldn't come back." I just thought she wanted to scare the new guests for fun. But that night, when I carved my first pumpkin, I chose to put it in the upstairs window, which overlooked the winding road and the trees. Halloween night came in the first cold wind of the season. I put the candy in a bowl, turned on the porch light, and heard the distant sounds of children knocking on each door. On Ashford Street, the jack-o'-lanterns flickered in the mist, yellow like little eyeballs. I sat reading a book, occasionally getting up to hand out candy. Around 8 p.m., the crowd thinned out. I was about to turn off the light when I saw a little girl standing by the fence, wearing a black cloak and a crooked witch's hat. I went to the door. The little girl looked up, her voice very small. "I'm lost. Can I borrow your phone?" I took her in, dried her hair, and asked for her address. She said, "My house is at the end of this street, right next door." I was startled for a moment. Next door was a house that had been vacant for many years, with boarded-up windows. I was about to ask again when the little girl looked out the window upstairs, where I had put the pumpkin, and smiled. "Did you hang the lantern there?" My mother said that whoever hung the lantern on that door would be invited to dinner. The voice was as light as a breeze. I suddenly felt goosebumps on my skin. I went back to the table, took the phone. When I turned around, the little girl had disappeared. The door was still closed. Only 2 small wet footprints remained on the steps, leading to the house next door. I turned off the porch light, locked the door. Inside the house, the light from upstairs was still shining down, a dull yellow. I climbed up, intending to turn it off. But when I got there, the pumpkin on the windowsill glowed brighter, even though the candle inside was almost out. The light fell on the wall, illuminating someone standing behind me, tall, thin, with long hair. I turned around, but there was no one. There was only the smell of candle smoke mixed with dried lavender, a scent I never used. I went downstairs and turned on the radio to ease my fear. On the local station, the newsreader's voice was steady. 10 years ago, on Halloween night, a house at the end of Ashford Street caught fire. The homeowner was a widow named Margaret Lowe, who lived with her 8-year-old daughter. The mother escaped, but the child did not. I stood there, stunned. Outside the window, the pumpkin glowed again, not gold this time, but white, pale as moonlight through glass. I didn't sleep that night. I sat downstairs listening. Near midnight, there was a light, steady footstep on the ceiling, as if a small person were walking around the room. I went up to check, Opened the door of the upstairs room. It was empty. But on the table, there was a neatly placed note. "Thank you for lighting the lamp. I found my way." The writing was childish, soft, and a little shaky. I folded it up and sat down. Suddenly, the wind blew through the crack in the door, causing the note to fly to the floor, turning it upside down. On the back was another line of words, smaller and shaky. "If you come back, tell your mother I'm sleeping peacefully." I felt my chest heave. Outside, the sound of the wind changed direction, bringing a very distant smell of smoke, like the smell of an old house burning down. I opened the window and extinguished the candle in the pumpkin. The light went out, but in that moment, I saw the shadow of a woman standing still on the porch, her long hair covering half her face. She looked up at the upstairs window, as if looking at a familiar place. I wanted to call out, but my voice choked. She just nodded slightly, then turned away, walking gradually into the fog at the end of the street. I stood there for a long time. When I returned, the paper on the floor was gone. The next morning, my neighbors came over to check on me and said they had seen a white light in my second-floor window all night and thought I had stayed up late. I just laughed and said, "It must be the reflection of the light." The old woman with white hair who sells goods at the market met me and said, "I know. Every year someone new moves into that house, and every year on Halloween night there is that light. People say they have never left this street." I didn't answer. That afternoon, I packed up and left Ashford. Before I left, I stopped the car to look at the house one last time. The wind blew the curtains upstairs. On the windowsill, the pumpkin I had put out the night before suddenly lit up again, a dim, white, slow light, like someone breathing out inside a candle. I thought I heard a very small child's voice in the wind. "Thank you for the light." I never returned to Ashford, but every year on Halloween, wherever I am, I place a small pumpkin on the windowsill, light a white candle, and carve no smiley face. Passers-by may think it a strange custom, but to me, it is a promise to a child who has found his way home, and to a mother who is still standing somewhere down the street, in the wind. Tonight, I do it again. The white candlelight reflects off the glass, and in its dim reflection, I see a glimpse of the wooden porch, the foggy street, and the yellow light at the end of Ashford Street, where a person still stands, patiently looking toward the houses with lights on. I turn off the radio, whispering to myself, "The street is still lit tonight. If you're looking, I'll keep the light on." I often drove through the night in early November, when Halloween had passed, the jack-o'-lanterns blown out by the wind, and the dry leaves that lined the roadside were a golden carpet someone was trying to preserve from the old season. I worked for a small trucking company, hauling small packages between towns in the Northeast. Route 41 was the route I traveled, the most narrow, winding, but quiet and pleasant. That night, it was raining sporadically. It wasn't quite cold, just enough to condense the glass. I turned on the radio, heard the local station talk about strange lights appearing along Route 41 for the past 2 weeks. I laughed. In New England, November is the season for all kinds of ghost stories. The clock read 1:17 a.m. I was driving through an empty stretch of road, pine trees on both sides, occasionally smelling of wet wood. Suddenly, I saw a figure ahead standing on the grassy shoulder, arms raised as if waving. The headlights returned, and I saw clearly a woman in a thin coat, bareheaded, hair dripping wet, holding something small like a cloth bag. I stopped the car, rolled down the window. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. The woman nodded, her voice as thin as a breath. I need a ride, just a little bit, to the bridge near Maple Junction. She got in, sat in the passenger seat. Her wet shirt dripped onto the carpet. I turned on the heater, asked, "Did your car break down?" She was silent for a moment, then said softly, "I was left behind." I didn't ask any more. Outside, the rain was pouring heavily. The rare streetlights that came through cast a yellow light on her face. Her face was strange, not too young, not too old. Just eyes so bright that I felt embarrassed to look at them for too long. After a few minutes, she asked, "Do you believe there are people who don't have time to leave?" I laughed. "You mean spirits?" "No, I mean the people who didn't leave that night." I turned to look at her. She was still staring straight ahead. Her voice wasn't shaking, but it was slow, as if each word was soaked in rain. "They're still walking on the familiar road, still waiting for people to stop." I didn't know what to say. We drove in silence for a few more miles. The radio started to crackle, interspersed with the old autumn leaves. I glanced at my watch absently. 1:41. She turned to me, asked very softly, "Have you ever walked into someone's memory?" I chuckled, thinking she was drunk. But when I looked in the mirror, the rear window was covered in a white mist. In the mist, there were 3 small, clear handprints, as if someone had just sat in the back seat. I stopped the car. "Do you have children?" She was silent. The rain pounded hard on the hood. After a while, she said, "I did. We had an accident here, 3 years ago, this very night." A chill ran down my spine. She turned, her eyes shining in the dim headlights. "Do you know why you often see white lights along Route 41? I swallowed. "Because someone still hasn't left on their last trip." She smiled very slightly, then pointed ahead. "That's Maple Bridge. Please stop." The bridge appeared in the mist, a narrow, old iron bridge with a no-stopping sign. Below was a small, muddy stream. I pulled over. She opened the door and got out, without an umbrella. I rolled down the window. "Are you sure?" She turned back, smiling. "Thanks for stopping. Not many people do that." She walked slowly up the bridge, her small figure in the rain. When she reached the middle, she stopped, put down the thing she was holding. It was a teddy bear. She stroked its head, then looked up toward the woods on the other side. A soft rumble of thunder, a flash of lightning, and in that moment, she was gone. No footsteps, no fall. Only the teddy bear lying wet on the bridge railing. I stepped out, my heart pounding. The rain was so thick on the bridge that I couldn't see any footprints. I picked up the bear. It was wet and cold, but still warm inside, as if someone had just hugged it tightly. I put it back down, looked down at the black water under the bridge. In the water, I saw my face reflected, and behind it, a figure standing, she, looking straight at me, her eyes shining faintly in the rain. I stepped back. When I looked again, there was only water. I went back to the car, trying to calm myself. The clock read 2:03. I turned on the radio, but it automatically switched to another frequency, a woman's voice. "The white lights are on Maple Bridge again tonight. They say, if you see someone waving on Route 41, stop. They probably just want to be taken home." I hung up. My heart was still pounding. I turned the car around and headed toward town. The rain was getting heavier. As I reached the turn near the hill, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the teddy bear lying in the back seat, clean and dry. I braked hard. My breath caught. I turned around. The seat was empty. The bear was gone. 3 days later, I returned to Maple Bridge in the morning. The sky was clear. The stream was flowing smoothly. There was no trace of that night. Only a wilted bouquet of flowers stuck to the bridge railing, and an old laminated photo. A young woman holding her little daughter, taken at a carnival. Below the photo was written, In loving memory, 2019. Next to the photo was the teddy bear, dry, neatly placed as if someone had just left it. I was about to take it away, but my hand stopped. Its fur was warm, soft, and smelled faintly of lavender, like the breath of the woman in the car. I left it where it was, and left. Now, when I drive Route 41, I don't turn on the radio. I drive slowly over the Maple Bridge, open the window a crack, let the cold wind in. Once, over the wind, I heard someone say very softly, "Thank you for stopping." I'm not sure if it's true. Maybe it's just the rain on the mirror. But sometimes, when the headlights pass over the bridge railing, I see a small white light, flickering like a flashlight, guiding someone still walking in the night, looking for a ride that hasn't ended. And I know that every Halloween, this road lights up with a new white light, like a greeting from those who haven't left that night.